Hello, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Let's play chess. You see, I'm wearing my German soccer jacket. I root for Team Germany because I'm a German speaking person. Stimmt. Ich kann Deutsch. And we are actually down 2-1 right now. With I think the game has just been called, and Ecuador has defeated Germany 2-1 in the group stage. So hats off to Ecuador, a well played match, and I'm also very confident that the Germans will be doing very well from here on in the tournament, in the knockout stages. So that being said, I have two games to review for you. This game finished just about 2 or 3 minutes ago. I had the white pieces and won, and then the other game was a draw where I sort of held a strange draw uh, bishops of same color. So we'll be looking for that. Maybe white missed an opportunity somewhere, judging both by the number of pawns relative to each other, 3 white pawns to 1 black pawn, but also by the graph of the game in review provided here. I'm not sure. Can my viewers see that graph? Yes, they can. I'm going to lower this, shrink my rectangle here. You can see how this game went on. We'll be back to that both for the competitiveness of the game, the accuracy of the game, and then some bright spots. 3 great moves per side, and I had a brilliant move. So I'll be really looking forward to going over that game and see how see the computer's take and explaining what I can explain. So here I had the white pieces. D4, D5, C4 is Queen's Gambit, and is this the Smith? This is the Albin counter gambit. I captured according to a book move, and white is doing fine. But then the issue, I think, what we're looking at is pawn to D4 just leaves white cramped, and I think for starters, players are used to being cramped while playing as black to some extent. French defense, the Caro-Kann, the Queen's Gambit decline to some extent. Players are not all that much used to being cramped with the white pieces, so a little bit of a surprise factor. Isn't that always been part of warfare? I played e3, maybe a little bit ambitious. I thought just get rid of this pawn on d4 once and for all, and we can get back to controlling the center. My opponent held on to d4 very stubbornly with a piece and a queen. And I captured anyway, thinking that after knight d4, I had this nifty move, bishop e3. And black has some threats to which she or they must respond. Some more buttressing of d4 is a good move by reviewing standards and by my own. It keeps this from liquidating, and black is building tension in his center that she or they probably have a slight advantage in holding. Knight f3. Knight takes f3, knight takes f3. Now I kind of feel like white's doing well. If we could get this pawn to move sideways 2 squares, which we can, then we could put a bishop on c4 and have a mating threat. It's black's turn to move, but we're at white's. Then this bishop on c5 is gone right away. We have a clear path towards development with knight c3. We have another choice to perhaps develop to d2, especially if we want to get in some kind of cheeky queenside castle. White's bishop, like I said, wants to go to c4 and might not be able to, so white might have to accept an inferior development. For instance, bishop to e2, and then a kingside castle looks nice and snug. That king is safe. So I like white's side of this contest right now. We also have pawns in positions that, sort of like in a mine type of way, prevent movement to f6. For instance, the knight to f6. Nope, because I have a pawn ready to capture that. So these pawns are actually relatively useful even if the e5 pawn is a little bit uh, extended away from some of its support. So we'll see. And why I say overall, so that's great, good for white. But overall, that this is also good for white because if we look at the position as is right now, black's turn to move. We won't ignore that. One piece developed, and all the other pieces are on their starting squares. And my opponent trades away that important bishop on e3. I mean, some of this is calculated fine. That black's not going to give away any material by way of this. I think white is good to continue to develop with moves like knight to c3 and bishop to e2, getting developed. Put a rook on d1 to scare black's queen. Now here, I might have made a little bit of a over-aggressive move. In the future, I'll castle kingside here. It's just that the king's nice and safe and we have better development as white. Instead, I played knight to d5, which is still an excellent move. My opponent is playing mostly for complication. Some people call that cat and mouse. In this case, it's a little bit cat and mouse, I guess you could say. Queen e4, and after queen c6, I'm probably about to blunder. There was a better move here for white. Let's get an indication from the analysis, and maybe g4 was a strong move here for white, or castles. But castles is second by a lot of difference between them. So g4 was really the move at this moment for white. Certain attempts to escape by the black knight make the fork knight e7 check so valuable as to pick up black's queen. White enjoys a nice endgame over all of this, making use of the c file to threaten, in the case of rook takes d6, threatening rook to c8 checkmate. This is of course why my opponent moved this pawn forward, so now that can't happen. The threat is back on against d6. And so white wisely doubles back on his one-upsmanship or threats, and the rook's on d1 to protect d6. I know as white in this position, this moment in time, I know this pawn on d6 might not be there forever. Somehow, sooner or later, black's gonna figure out how to get both the rook and the king teamed up against that pawn. The bishop, forget it. The bishop's this dark square, light squared bishop, and why would I push? So my opponent might play a move like f5 to get the king to f7, and then e6, and now this pawn is being lost. But it's going to take a little bit of time, a whole lot of precious time. So I was trying to pick here what kind of impact can my bishop have upon the chessboard. Ideally, picking up a pawn in return. I'm not sure I can do that. How exactly how equal this endgame is or isn't. But I was taking a while. It took almost a whole minute, and then said we can't take quite this much time. Played pawn to b4, just putting my own pawns on a dark square where this bishop will not roam. Okay? Can't go there. So the king coming closer, and I think the avenue I suggest was with f5, but perhaps also king d7 and then some sort of sidewinder move like rook to c6. Sidewinder's not a technical term. I don't know where I got that, but then there's two on the pawn here. This might be preferable slightly to pawn to f5 because of how extremely fixed my opponent's pawns on light squares would be to make a route from f7 to e6 and threatening d6 twice from there. I thought bishop c4. He's been wanting to play it all game. We might as well let him. And if the king steps off from his guardianship of f7, then we get the pawn that we're gonna probably lose on d6 back in the form of bishop takes f7. b5. Maybe we'll come back to this position. I see that the best move was bishop b3. I thought bishop trade was just fine for white, so I went with this to offer the trade. But now black is most definitely going to be in time to double up on d6, king and rook, with the bishop no longer on either c4 or b3. Black might use the e6 square. g4, and then this trade of rooks. Yeah, this was indeed a thing. When I played g4, I'm partially playing to restrict black on the king's side, and I think it's not the end of that restriction, but black can play pawn to f5. Do I want to trade? I don't think so. We'll play g5 and have advances along the h-file controlled by the g5 pawn. So that was one way, but the other, this is how it occurred in the game. Rook takes d6, and I'm trading rooks back because now, yes, and you see it, with white having better presence along the half line here, and with this opportunity, white can play king to d4. The game wants g5 first, but king to d4 is plenty here. Is enough for the win, I'm quite sure. And we have the exchange. The opposition, sorry. The opposition is whites and whites only. Black is ill-suited for pawn pushes on either flank. There's some stutter steps on f6 and h6 to be done. So as soon as black tries to regain any kind of strong position with his king, I'm just going to lock these up. And g5 here was an excellent way. G5 was, the whole plan centers around g5, so I'm glad to see that it's the only good move here for white. These other moves are so much closer towards draws. We play g5, and if captures in the game, then this side is, black's pawns are stuck on this side. Or even if after g5 to push past to f5, well, then you know what, the h pawn is still stuck, and these pawns are gridlocked or interlocked, or however you have it. Black will have to break away from the opposition, and white will move in most likely on the king's side, but not with 100% certainty, because perhaps black breaks towards the king's side, then white breaks towards the queen's side. Not only that, white has 1, 2, 3. We have additional moves to waste in the case of a opposition that could occur later. Black's locked up, and white has moves that can free him should he become locked up. My opponent played f takes g5. Is probably the strongest way to make this, is to just, as black, you got to puncture some kind of hole into the center of the board. And when black moves towards the queen's side, I'd say I'm going to have plenty of time over here on the king's side. a3 puts it almost out of question. Is either after either a4 or a takes b4, a takes b4, Black's king will have to find a way to go all the way around. 1 move, 2 move, 3 moves, 4 moves, then out of the way. So that's 1 move, 2 moves, 3 moves, 4 moves, 5 moves, 6 moves, 7 moves, 8 moves, 9 moves. You're better off inventing a time machine. White is just a lot closer. 1 move, 2 move, 3 move, 4 move, 5 moves, 6 moves, 7 moves. So 2 moves closer. And yeah, so White is gonna be quicker here. So a little bit of form here, a little bit of finesse. We're in a situation like this. I mean, we can calculate it out and be all confident, or we could just say, I'm also confident that if I move to f6, then my opponent will not queen with check. Getting off of the diagonal, where your opponent's pawn will queen is sometimes just that ever so slightly bit of safety net that, in this case, White might need. He doesn't. I mean, my pawn's there in plenty of time enough, or almost. And yes, see here I go for just the straightforward approach, winning the game. There's all kinds of ways that I could do a check and then another check. Queen b8 makes the game out of question, right? Whenever the b1 pawn queens, that's when my queen will capture that queen, and Black will be woefully too slow for my h pawn. All right, pretty cool stuff, huh, guys? Here, this was the draw. I might not say all that much about the draw because I'm really hungry. The f pawn here is not a problem for White. To move the f pawn to f3, the dark squared bishop and Black's queen are like worlds away from ever getting to h4 for a check on White's king, and even then it can be stopped with pawn to g3. So I'm not worried about moving my f pawn here. g4, yeah, White's doing well. We built up a little bit of a material advantage. I think that Black will probably trade on d6. He does. I'm going to try to hold on to that pawn. It's not clear that White can. I'm going to trade along the c file is good, but we lose our pawn in the process. I'm not wild about that. This is owing to rook c1 will hold on to that move. I think White could have played bishop b6 here. And to that effect, let's see how that works out for White. Bishop b6. That might have been, I might have been scared away by that. The idea is that now Black has 2 pieces on e2. Does bishop f3 correct this? And it does. And all of a sudden, White is doing very well. It's worth the b2 pawn to have a structural strength and promoting threat like this one here on the d file and c file for White. It's worth the b pawn for it, especially since I'm also ahead in material aside from that. Now, this frees up my rook at d1. Doesn't need to guard the pawn at d6. Doesn't matter how. If black somehow gets a rook on that, then bishop captures, and even if then king captures, it's still a trade of 4 points of material for 5, and white will have furthered his lead. So with that in mind, this is considered an inaccuracy. It's one of those rare cases where the computer is wrong. So moves, we're looking for white here to play. Well, we want to get this rook traded off. That's black's most active piece. What if king to e3 and then rook to d2? Let's go with the evaluation bar that's not so good for white. We open board up. All right. You see the evaluation bars indicating that white can win this game. Bishop f2. Okay. This is a strange endgame. Opponent's losing another pawn by that move, right? So we think now that white's going to free up his bishop's movement. Black with a final desperate move, pawn to f2, and recapturing here. Couple ways to do this. Let's try this way. All right. So that's how the second game could have wound up, and back to how it actually went. We had some white experiences, material advantage, 2-point material advantage, has the bishop to a pawn, and whatever I did, I just bungled it somehow. I thought this was gonna break through, or yeah, I don't know. Why I would play king g3 here? I thought there was enough breakthrough on the king side that these two pawns would really start to count. I made this move knowing of this fork, knowing that fork would be coming in. I guess the evaluating engine is kind of agreeing with that. This is still White's game to win here. King g3 didn't help enough, and maybe h4 is required first. King to e3, a more serious understanding of Black's central pawn threat. I mean, you can't fault the route I took either, evaluation bar wise, because White's ahead by almost 7 points in that way. It looks like h4 was White's bad move. Maybe guarding g3 was more important than I had considered. So let's play from this point. Actually, let's finish evaluating what actually occurred and then play from that point. We see that the kings and the bishops are just sort of moving back and forth, and some heroics are required even for White to maintain a draw with bishop to d1. We look on this board, and if Black captures, then White captures on e3, and the best Black can do now is a draw, and that's not certain given connected passed pawns on A and B and a passed pawn on h4, all against a king and a bishop. White's king and 3 pawns might be able to make something of that. I don't really want to get into the details of it. It is probably pretty complicated. This repetition of position draw in a position that deserved to be repeated for a draw. So that's all right. We wanted to review bishop to b5. No, h4. There's something wrong with h4. Alright, so let's take a look in the practice. In practice, White to move here. Probably to bring the king closer. King f4 is a mistake that still wins. What would have been better? King c2. Now after it was we call this sometimes an interpolation. h4 here, according to computer, is bad. Draw. Immediate draw is all gonna end in a draw, at least with best play. King to g5, and then Black's move, and then h4 is win. White's down. Now White's gonna win. So the move king to g5 had to be played. It had to be played in a timely manner. I want to see that this is mostly All right, sorry about that. Sorry about that. That was rude. That was rude. I am going. Nothing against. That was rude. I won't do that. Oh, all right. Was that a? Was this one we kind of started with a accurate draw, and nonetheless, it's still great to see that that analysis I did led to this accurate draw. That was the game that was a draw when we played it, right? This isn't an accurate draw though, Jordan. This is fixed to make white a win. Alright, try to correct myself here. One I want to see then is this one. Okay, yeah, this one. Heartbreak. My opponent had heartbreak because whenever your opponent sort of queens the move before you do, it's not all. It sometimes is a little bit of disappointment. That being said, I thought this opponent played really well. I had the privilege of playing against him in 3 games, not just this one. But Zain Tarafa defeated me in game 1 and 2, and then I came back to win game 3. I had a blast doing so, and that's it. That's it. That's all I got. That's it for today. Well, no, that's it for this session. So, thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Have a great night.